You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SEBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SEBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SEBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SEBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's dive in. Let us commence our broadcast week here on the Options Insider Radio Network, the home, the originator of the Options Podcast, the OGs, if you will, of the Options Podcast space. We were doing it before there was an iPhone, before podcasts were cool, before most people knew what the hell a podcast was. I remember going to a lot of firms in those early days, 2006, early 2007, telling them we're doing a website, an email, and also a podcast, and just crickets. What the F is a podcast? These are pretty large entities you are familiar with, listeners, and large marketing budgets and staffs, and they had no idea what language I was speaking. Hence the name Options Insider Radio. People knew what the hell that was. And it has stuck all these 16-plus years later. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever-scintillating network upon which so many of you are binging these days. And, of course, if you like what you hear, however you're listening, whatever platform it is, a check, a like, a comment, whatever they let you do, it all helps. A review, it all helps new people continue to discover the content. And, hey, you already downloaded the show. You already cost me some bandwidth. The least you could do is pay me back with a little bit of the old review, rating, that kind of fun. And if you want to go above and beyond, you want more content at the end of the day, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Get a couple of exclusive shows every week, 200 plus waiting for you now the second you hit that join button. Of course, live access to everything we do, and of course, awesome giveaways and a whole bunch of other fun surprises lurking in there. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go around the horn, see who's joining us on the old program today. We are joined, as usual, for the Monday episode by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW. as well as, the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian. I introduce them now, listeners, because it is time to embark upon our kickoff for the week. Get the blood pumping, get the brain juices flowing with a little bit of the old 80s wrestling trivia. Here we go. All right, and I will be monitoring the chat, so if you folks want to buzz in there in the chat, you can. Race to your buzzers there. All right, here we go. Today's wrestler. This is an interesting one. Famous, iconic wrestler. This person will argue that he is the biggest professional wrestler of all time. Bigger, he would say, than Hogan. It's definitely disputable. I dispute it. Many others do. But hey, this person claims that he is still alive. That's a hint there. And this person did a lot of their best work, I would say, outside of the WWF. I don't think this person is a WWF person because they weren't really in it a lot when I was watching it as a kid. They kind of came later in the 80s. They were mostly in other promotions. But what's interesting, kind of our trivia question about this person today, is this person was born in 1949. His birth name was Fred in a children's home in Tennessee. He was adopted. And the interesting thing was the year after he was adopted, 1950, this children's home he was adopted in was shut down, and the person who ran it was arrested for illegally kidnapping and adopting out children for money, and had been doing so since the 20s. So there's a good possibility that this person, who ended up becoming one of the most iconic wrestlers of all time, may have been illegally kidnapped at birth and sold to his, ended up becoming his birth parents. I think they raised him in Detroit. So maybe I'll leave it there. I have some other clues I can give you, but they'll make it pretty obvious. But I already see a buzz here from the unklest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW. So, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, have at it. Which person who claims he is the biggest wrestler of all time and may have been illegally kidnapped and sold at birth?
Well, that would be the Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
Oh, yeah. You know this story?
Oh, yeah. Big time. I mean, Ric Flair is the biggest wrestler of all time. Even Hogan says that Flair is the biggest of all time. So you're
in the Flair camp. It definitely seems to be two camps on this one.
Well, I mean, it's one to where he's not my favorite of all time, but he's definitely the biggest of all time. I mean, to have done what he's done for the sport, what he's done, I mean, the guy's a degenerate as a human being, but I mean, in terms of as a professional wrestler and what he did for professional wrestling, you could argue that Hogan did more to make it popular to the mainstream.
I think crossover Hogan has to be bigger. I think more people still. Andrew knows Hulk Hogan. He does not know Ric Flair, right?
I bet he would know Ric Flair.
Maybe he might, but I think he definitely knows Hogan. So that's my barometer.
Yeah. Either way, though, in terms of, I'd have to go with Ric Flair as the all-time greatest professional wrestler. Like I say, he's not my favorite, but much respect to the man. I mean, just some of the things that he's said. I mean, I still use some of his things with coaching. If you want to be the man, you got to beat the man.
You got to beat the man, yes.
I mean, you may not like it, but you better learn to love it because it's the best thing going today. Woo! Ric Flair's the man.
That stupid yell has infected so many things now. The Ric Flair woo. You go to most sporting events, even like non-related wrestling. I go to like a UFC fight, and people are yelling woo there. It's like, this has nothing to do with wrestling, but it has infected other sports. So the woo, I'll give you the woo. The woo is very over. But yeah, interesting. I definitely lean more in the Hogan camp, but it is a debate worth having as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. Yeah, it's more than just 80s wrestling here, even though that'd be fun to have an all 80s wrestling show. You know, we are big with some former 80s wrestlers. You know, Sergeant Slaughter, fan of the network. Brutus the Barber, fan of the network. So maybe we'll get Ric Flair one of these days. That would be fun. See some guesses in our live chat for Andre. Interesting guess. You know, he does come from the unknown reaches of France, but I do believe he knew who his birth parents were at the very least. So yeah, he was not kidnapped and stole. Imagine if he kidnapped and stole what became Andre the Giant. That would just be fascinating. But intriguing stuff. Just adds more to the drama of the story that is the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. As we keep on rolling, let's see if these markets are looking kind of natural. And I guess the natural state you could argue for the markets right now is wanting to go up. Looking like that way again today. S&P up almost another 0.5%. Dow up little over 0.5%. Dow, by the way, coming off a record 10-plus days of upside, which they have not done for quite some time. So good days to be in the old economy, apparently, again. And then NASDAQ up about 0.15%. So NASDAQ not exactly feeling its oats out there. Of course, that means as we kicked off the show, VIX, once again, not doing a heck of a lot. Literally on 1380. I don't think we're going to see a lot of evolution until our friends from the Fed come on the scene later this week. I don't think we're going to see a huge move in VIX one way or the other. I mean, I'm prepared to be surprised, but I don't expect to see a lot of vol coming off. Pre-Fed, at least. VVIX 93 up about 2 points. VXX 23.25 down about almost exactly 2/3 of a point. UVXY 16.5 down about a point. SVIX threatening the 30 handle 29.80. That puts it up about exactly a point from where we were on Thursday's show. Let's see. Did it hit it intraday? Oh, it got ever so close, listeners. 29.94. So just flirting, just kissing the 30 strike. Could not make it today. UVIX 380. Really, who cares at this point? Down 0.3 of a point. It's a piece of crap until they reverse split it. And VolQ 17.75 down about 1/4 of a point. All right, let's go around the horn. Let's start with the guy who just won, Mr. Uncle Mike. First off, is this a well-known story about Ric Flair? I wasn't familiar with it, so I guess that clued you in. And then B, any other thoughts you have on the Nature Boy? And then C, what's catching your eye in a kind of gently drifting Uncle Mike type of market, sir?
Well, I mean, I'd say it's probably, like, if you know Ric Flair, you know he was an NWA guy, a WCW guy, and he'd had his run in the WWF, but it really wasn't that big while he was in the WWF. But if you dig just a little bit deeper on Ric Flair, if you're like a second level wrestling fan like myself, at least, I would say it's probably a second tier type of story about like the history of Ric Flair. It's not too deep, but it's a little bit deep. I mean, he had some interesting things about him in his life. He was actually struck by lightning twice and lived through it. He survived a plane crash. And I don't even know how much I couldn't even comprehend the amounts of drugs and alcohol the man's put through his body, and somehow he's still alive. It boggles science. I mean, it's just he should not be alive when you think about everything that he's been through. But my favorite things about Ric Flair is that he could always get a crowd fired up. There is no one better than getting a crowd fired up than Ric Flair with what he would do. And just with how he was, a lot of people say that he actually invented hip hop, meaning that in terms of like how he used to call himself, he obviously never did any rap music, but like the hip hop lifestyle, a lot of people say he invented it. He always said let's see if I can get this right, the limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing son of a gun. And I'm having a hard time keeping these alligators down, pointing to his alligator shoes. He could really get you fired up. And but the other thing that was neat about him, in almost all of his matches that he won, he barely won them. He just barely found a way to eke it out, and that's how he would roll. So much respect for the Nature Boy. He is the wrestling GOAT, no doubt about that, in my opinion. In terms of these markets, I think that the Fed's going to have a lot to say. I think right now, my opinion, the next upside stopping point for the S&P is 4,800. That's the all-time highs that we had in early 2022. And by early, I think it was literally the first day. I think that's the next stop up. But we have a big roadblock that could be in the way. What does the Fed do? And not even so much what does the Fed do, how does the market react to it? I think the Fed's going to pause. That's my prediction for this week. They could raise, they could lower, who knows? But I think they're going to pause. Because there's no reason to raise rates. I think what they should do is lower it, but they won't do that because that's like admitting you made a mistake. And politicians typically aren't good at such things, even if it is for the greater good. So I think they are going to pause. If they do raise, I'll be surprised, but you never know. They could. It's anybody's guess at this point. But I think that's going to be the market reaction to that. It's going to be interesting because if they do pause, then the market could react to it saying, oh, the Fed's pausing. That means the economy's fine and inflation is somewhat in check. Let's rally. Or the market could view it as, okay, we've already rallied on the Fed pausing because we already knew that because the market tends to know things before things actually happen, and this could be the sell-off. This could be the reversal. So I think there is a lot of uncertainty this week for where it's going to be, and I think the Fed is going to be a bigger announcement or a bigger move or a bigger pivot point, whatever, than a lot of people are saying it's going to be. So not to steal too much thunder from around the block, but I'm very much a Fed watcher right now.
Yeah, funny you say that. I have the Fed watch up right now, and the market's very much in the opposite camp, Mr. Uncle Mike. This is one of the most biased I've ever seen. 99% probability of them raising this week. Usually you see like 80-20, something like that, a little bit of wiggle room. They are pricing in no wiggle room for you, Uncle Mike, out there. So the market
1%.
Taking the other side. Uncle Mike gets 1% to play with. Intriguing stuff. Now we go out. That tinny voice means we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the show. And do you have any enduring memories of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair? Were you aware of that childhood kidnapping story, sir?
I was not of the childhood kidnapping, but I was going through those types of names, and I was disappointed in myself that I didn't think of Ric Flair. I was like on Paul Orndorff. I was on all these I was thinking arrogance. But Ric Flair is perfect, great wrestler. I think the best was that fake, like when he got hit, he would like pop up, walk around, and then faint or fall flat in his face. That was just something to behold, the way he could do that. He was so good at selling, and that's part of what made him, I think, why people liked him so much. Consummate worker, great guy to wrestle against, was what I was told. And that was what people really liked about him. Yeah. So they're telling us the Fed is going to raise 1/4 point on Wednesday. But then the big question is, when you look at the next meeting, they're only saying a 16% chance for a 1/4 basis point in September. And so that is where I think the action lies. Does the Fed raise and then pause, or do they come out hawkish and that rate for September goes to 50-50 or something like that? That's where we could see, I think, some action out of tomorrow's announcement from the Federal Reserve and where things could get interesting. Because I'm on this Fed Watch tool. They're really not pricing in much more after this, despite the fact many Fed members have said, hey, they want to raise twice.
Which is insane.
Mike is saying Mike's not wrong on the pause, but he just might be one meeting early, according to kind of the way the markets are betting on the Federal Reserve. What I'm finding interesting in the markets is kind of the big rotation that we've seen. You mentioned the Dow. The Dow had been such an underperformer to the S&P and the NASDAQ 100 over the first half of the year. And now, over the last week and a half, with all this rebalance and all this earnings, we're seeing the Dow really kind of take off relative to the other indexes. And then over the last couple of days, the NASDAQ 100, the NASDAQ has been a little bit softer. So, before the beginning of this rally on July 7th, the Dow was only up about 1.8%, the S&P up about 8%. That has tightened up to the S&P is now up 11, the Dow's up 6.5. So there's still some room for the Dow to catch up. Old economy definitely seems like that's drawing in some investors here, drawing in traders. Energies started to pick up again. Healthcare, energy really leading the way. It's up 2% today. Materials are really strong today. And that's kind of what is been driving the market here. The financials and energy, which the Dow is a lot stronger in, and the healthcare have really started to pick up as money has come out a little bit of tech and some of these mega caps ahead of this rebalance. So interesting. How long can this little streak of the Dow Jones run? But, we've seen a couple of days in a row now where the NASDAQ opens up pretty strongly and then it gets faded. They've tried to get it negative multiple times today, and it's kind of been bought. I'm very interested to see what the rest of the day looks like for the NASDAQ 100, which will kind of dictate what goes on with the S&P as well.
They need out there, and they need a little bit of McDonald's coming out saying they're making burgers with AI. Then bam, there goes the Dow. Off to the races, sir. Never looking back. Need to sprinkle a little bit of AI pixie dust on the Dow, listeners. And then there we go. Let's see what's going on right now in the markets. And the answer is kind of a decent day. Even the VIX putting up some respectable numbers. I mean, we're not threatening 1 million or anything like that, but it's also north of 250,000 where it usually is hanging out right now. 367 on the tape right now. That's looking even more impressive when you see that the ADV is going in the wrong direction again, back below 700K, 696. I have a feeling the Fed coming up later this week is going to change that, going to inject some paper again, usually does. So we shall see there. I would ask you folks, it might be a fun question of the week about the Fed, but it seems like it's kind of a done deal. When the Fed watch is almost 100%, not a lot of room for a poll out there, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. SPY, 4.2 million. Again, you can kind of set your watch by that one at this point. 7.31 is the ADV in SPY. The S, 1.25 million. The ADV, 2.66. So the S actually looking kind of light. Usually we have come to expect it to be around 1.75 million right now. Again, not bad paper, and a year ago that would have been very impressive. Small caps actually looking like the laggard today, only actually 10,000 less than VIX right now, which is interesting. 357 on the tape for IWM. That ADV moving in the wrong direction, back below 900K again to 878. I've been saying for a while now, I thought that north of 1 million ADV was unsustainable in small caps. They managed to prove me wrong for a much longer time than I expected. Now finally starting to come back down the other way. And the Qs, 1.85 million, the ADV, 3.1 million. You don't need me to tell you that the Qs can put up some numbers. Speaking of numbers, let's get out to single names, see what's cooking out there. Is it a day when single names are tearing it up, listeners? And the answer is kind of. 286,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That ain't nothing, listeners. That gets you to the artist formerly known as Facebook, now Meta, off $2 exactly, trading 292.25. We're, of course, all living in this NASDAQ rebalanced new era now, so we shall see what impact that has on a lot of these high-flying names going forward. Today, though, Meta still putting up some numbers, 286,000 contracts. Right behind it, number 9. We've got a name we don't see that often on our top 10 anymore outside of this time of year, outside of earnings season. This is Bank of America. Ticker symbol BAC, of course, listeners. 32.75, up about 3/4 right now. So a nice little pop for them. Good for 296,000 contracts right now. So at number 9, still can't break through 300K. Number 8 now is where we do it, listeners. 303,000 contracts. That gets us to AMD. So 1/2 of the chip zone. Coming in a little low today. 111 and change, up about 15 cents or so right now. Not a huge move for AMD compared to what we've seen out there, I should say. Number 7, these ones coming in low today as well. The Amazonians, 391,000 contracts, and the number 7 spot off almost 90 cents on the day, trading at 129.14 right now. Good for 391,000 contracts. And again, this is the time of year where we expect to see some of those usual suspects maybe move around a little bit. Amazon usually hanging out at the number 3 spot. Today, number 7, because we've got some other names popping in there, which is always refreshing to see, including a new number 1 today. Spoiler. Haven't seen that in a while. Number 6, we're going out to China now, listeners. It is everyone's favorite or perhaps least favorite Chinese surrogate. It is BABA, 403,000 contracts on the tape. Up 407 today, trading 96 and about 1/4, 4.5% to the upside. Wow. Nice day for China. Apparently, China is on again. They were trading 91.30 this morning. They got as high as 97 and about 1/2. So banger day here for Alibaba. Wow. Impressive move for them out there. Interesting stuff there. China apparently back, at least through the lens of Alibaba. You know, that trade, listeners, is on again, is off again, depending on the day of the week. Today, it is most decidedly on. Number 5, NIO. This is the name we haven't talked about in a while here on the show as well. They've caught a nice little bid over the past few months, and we were talking about them not too long ago, back in May, trading right around that $7 level. So that was pretty much their low for the year, exactly $7. Trading right now almost $12, $11.90 or so, up about $1.30 again today, or 12.3%. So NEO apparently back on the radar as well. Again, going back to that argument, apparently China is back on today, listeners. 414,000 contracts on the tape. Number 4 is intriguing. Haven't seen them this far down in a while. This is the fruit company, Apple, slumming it at number 4 today. Only 463,000 contracts. Apple up about exactly $1, trading almost 193, a little bit below it right now, listeners. So intriguing stuff. The market should be happy today. Apple is green after all, but not a ton of paper on the tape. Being usurped today by the other half of the chip zone. Number 3, it's NVIDIA. 476,000 contracts on the tape, up about $3.50 today, 446 and about a half right now. Number 2, yes, I said number 2. When's the last time we saw that, listeners? It's the old Tesla, 1.4 million contracts on the tape right now. Tesla up 712, or about 2.75%, trading 267, about 15 or so right now. So nice pop for them. They've had over 13-point range. They got as high as 267.80. The low was 254.12. My goodness, quite the day here for Tesla. The street loves them. The street hates them. Kathy Wood loves them. Kathy Wood hates them. A lot of drama out there with Tesla, which is why you folks love it. But the number one killer out there today, listeners, the big dog in the options landscape, taking the crown from Tesla today. It is the former, and now apparently reigning once again, King of the Apes, AMC, 1.5 million contracts exactly. AMC popping hard today. 1.75 to the upside, 39%, trading a little bit north of $6, about $6.10 right now. My goodness, big move for the King of the Apes. Baron saying meme volatility is back. Well, in certain aspects of the market, it hasn't ever really gone away, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. Are you back in on AMC, listeners? Are you slinging this bad boy? Some court rulings in their favor, a lot combining to drive AMC to the number one spot. When's the last time we said that, listeners? Probably back in the meme stock days, quite frankly. We've seen AMC popping up on our list, number 8, number 9 in the past recently, but number 1? That's pretty aggressive. Let's see what else is aggressive on the old earnings docket this week, because we are in it again, listeners. Hopefully you're a fan of earnings trading, because you're getting some coming your way this week. Today we got Domino's, Beats, Philips, Whirlpool, and everyone's favorite, Bank of Hawaii. Tomorrow we've got Dow, we've got good old Verizon, 3M, GE, Microsoft, you may have heard of them, Alphabet, and Visa. So getting some of the big tech AI names you folks love as well popping off tomorrow. Wednesday, AT&T, man, they had a banger week last week. Can they keep it up going into earnings? I guess we'll find out. Boeing, our friends across the street, though not for much longer. And then Coca-Cola and the artist formerly known as Facebook, as well as Chipotle and Mattel. How much Barbie love they're getting off this movie, I guess we'll find out. Thursday, Mickey D's about to announce the impending launch of AI burgers. Stock's going to take off. You heard it here first, listeners. Ford, Roku. Roku used to be a hot frequent offender on our top 10. Haven't seen them in the top 10 in quite some time. I'm guessing Thursday might change that. Crocs, rubber shoes, MasterCard, a whole bunch of fun. And Friday, ExxonMobil, all sorts of fun. We got some updated earnings move results right off the presses, right before showtime from our friends over there at Orasland. Let's go to Domino's Pizza. They're popping off before the bell. 385 and about a half is where they were trading. They were pricing in nearly 5%, listeners. So they're pricing in a decent move. They delivered 1%, and they are still at 1% right now. So Domino's Pizza, dramatically underperforming from an earnings vol perspective, at least. They get our earnings vol underperformer of the day award. They've underperformed nearly 80% of the straddle that they were pricing in. Since everyone loves them, got to talk about Bank of Hawaii. 53.70 is where they were before the bell. They're pricing in 6.2%. They delivered 5%. Actually, they just ticked now. They moved a little bit north of 6%. So they're pretty much in line with their straddle. So intriguing stuff. What's coming up this week? Let's go out a little bit. We've got Whirlpool after the bell, but let's go to some of the names you folks are really sinking your teeth into these days. Let's go to Alphabet. Coming up tomorrow after the bell, GOOG and GOOGL both hanging out right around 120 right now, listeners. pricing in 6 3/4. In the past, they've moved about $5.50 each. So decent amount of extra juice. Again, you just whisper AI and this thing moves. So it's hard to argue that extra juice is not merited out there. Verizon, might be talking about them a little bit later. They are tomorrow before the bell. Almost $34 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $1.36. In the past, they moved 81 cents. So a fair amount of extra juice on a percentage basis, at least out there in good old Verizon. AT&T, like I said, they had a banger move last week. 14 3/4 is where they were when we ran these numbers. They're pricing in about $0.75. In the past, they have moved about $0.75. So not a heck of a lot going on out there. Let's go to Buffett's favorite, Coca-Cola, 62.5. They're at 26 before the bell. They're pricing in about $1.20, which is fairly rich for them. In the past, they've moved about 80 cents, so that's a decent amount of extra juice as well. Chipotle, 26 after the bell. I love their stock price, almost $2,100. So they're trying to be a little bit like a junior Buffett there themselves. They're pricing in 124 3/4. In the past, they've moved a little bit north of $140. So a fair amount of less juice out there in Chipotle land. Listen, let's keep going, man. We have dozens upon dozens of tickers for you folks to sink your teeth into. It's a good time to be an earnings trader, listeners. Let's go to Ford, 27th after the bell. About $14 is where the stock was. They're pricing in 68 cents. In the past, they're moving 55 cents. So a little bit extra juice in Ford. Maybe they're considering reacquiring their Rivian stake. That would certainly move the needle again, at least from a vol perspective. All right, let's see right now. We have updated earnings season report. We're hanging out at exactly 150% with 69 names reporting. You know, that's still pretty early. It's only about not even 10% of the names, so we have a lot more to come. That number, spoiler alert, is going to come in. Our long-term average is hanging out at about 98%, which in and of itself is pretty rich. During the height of the pandemic, that was a lot lower. So intriguing stuff out there as we keep on rolling. If you guys want to see all those reports for yourselves, you know where to go. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab, and you can begin your sojourn to the dark side of earnings move results as we continue moving into the dark side of the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for The Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's dance. Let's unleash the eye of Sauron, see what it fixes its gaze upon. And looks like this first one here is a newcomer. This is Avantor Inc., ticker symbol AVTR, AVTR. Trading right now 23 and about a quarter, up about 20 cents today. This is a chemical and materials company out of Pennsylvania. On the year, they were trading almost $31 a year ago, so off about 25%. Not the best year for them. Let's see. They crushed them pretty hard early on. They crushed them down to about $19 and change in September of last year. Then they managed to slowly rally it until about March of this year, got up to about 25.10 again. And then that was all she wrote. It kind of fell off again. They crushed it back down to about a little bit shy of $18, $17.91. That was in April of this year. And since then, they've managed to rally it again over the last few months, rallying it from about $18 up to where it is right now, 23 and about a quarter. So a little over $5 in upside. Nothing to sneeze at out there in Avantor, but still off almost 8 handles on the year, or about 25%. So still net a rough year for Avantor / Avatar, whatever you want to call it. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out here. Looks like somebody ain't feeling this upside, listeners. They're saying, you know what? I'm going to fade a little bit of this with some juicy AUG 22.5 puts. So about 70 cent out of the money puts. They paid 70 cents for these, so appropriately enough, lifting the offer. That's about a 44 vol. Worth noting, there are earnings coming up. They are coming up in about 4 days, this Friday on the 28th. So we'll know pretty soon whether these puts are paying off or not. They didn't go up tied. I didn't see any massive baskets of stock with it. So it doesn't seem like it's a puts and stock trade, but you never know. They could be lurking with the stock. Usually when they buy these puts, usually they have stock against it already. So you can kind of always consider them a bit of a puts in stock trade, even if they didn't go up that way. Mr. Meatball, sir. First off, are you a big fan of Avantor / Avatar? Is this your favorite chemicals and materials company? And B, did you notice this activity? And C, what do you think about these meaty puts?
Yeah, I did notice it. And Mark, I do think these were done with some stock around. I think they got the stock up late because about 438,000 shares went up with the conditioned stock option at 1:14 Eastern time.
Okay, I hate when they bury that stuff, but they like to do that. I think
they put the stock up late.
Yeah,
and which would why you wouldn't see it when you're prepping for the show, which starts at noon Central. So it's definitely an earnings play. It looks like they're looking for a move. The stock has been moving around. It had a really nice day on Friday, a really nice day. So, someone looking for that kind of volatility here at the top, leans bearish, but they're basically saying we think it's going to go down, but if it goes up, we don't want to get our shirt handed to us. So that's the way I think that trade sets up.
Yeah, puts in stock is the old bouncer trade, right? Can't stay here. It's got to go somewhere.
Yeah,
at this point. So
but it was delta neutral.
Okay, interesting. So that we'll know in a couple of days, listeners, on Friday, whether or not this one works out. You like this, listeners? A decently meaty puts with some stock in Avantor. Interesting stuff. They have had a rough year, but have had a nice resurgence over the last few months. So you can kind of look at it two different ways, glass half full or glass half empty out there as we keep on rolling out there to, let's see, our next one, if I could get it up here. There we go. All right, this is good old First Horizon Corp, ticker symbol FHN, trading right now about 13 and a quarter, up about 60 cents or about almost 5% on the day. So a nice little pop for FHN. And you know what? They were kind of hanging out for most of the, let me see if I could scroll this better. There we go. All right. A year ago, they were trading 22 and about a quarter. So rough year net for them. They're down about 9 points from that level. They hung out there most of the year until February, late February. They were still trading almost $25. And then they fell off a cliff. Obviously, we know what happened getting into late February, early March. Some of that contagion fear stuff. And this really they just came for this one. They went from about $25 down to about 14 in the span of, looks like, about 2 weeks. And then they tried to rally it. They tried to buck the trend a little bit, get up to about almost $19 again in mid-April. And then that was all she wrote. They fell off a cliff again. They went from $17.50 late April to their low for the, it looks like around 9 2/3 or so back on May 12th. So bit of a rough comeuppance here for First Horizon. Again, kind of a tale of two halves of the year again, or even more recent than that, because the first half of the year kind of unched, then they fell off. And then lately they've been rallying and fighting their way back. Right now I said 13 and a quarter. So on the year they're still down, but they've bounced from that 9 and about 2/3 level back in May all the way up to 13 and a quarter again. So it kind of depends how you like to look at this one. And we got a similar trade, looks like, unfolding here. This time to the upside, we've got the NOV 14, so slightly out of the money calls. And also going out to November. We haven't seen a lot of that long term in a little bit. Usually it's August. It's very near dated. In the case of AT&T, it was weeklies. People swinging for a lot of near dated upside. This time they're giving themselves some time all the way out to November. They're buying the November 14s nearly 8,000 times. A lift in the offer. This is about a 44 vol. So decently juicy, all things considered. The stock was actually a little bit lower. The stock was a little bit below 13 when these went up, about 12.95. So they're getting a nice little kick in the beginning here with stock moving in their direction. Again, it's November, so you're not talking high delta, but still, it's better to have it than to not have it. The next announcement, though, looks like they just announced, because their next announcement is not until October 17th. So you're not getting any earnings juice, at least for a while, on this one, which is kind of interesting. Mr. Meatball, seems like someone may be playing a little bit of the post-contagion fear comeback, sir. What say you?
Yeah, that this has been a definitely one that got scooped up in the mid-cap contagion. Interesting. We saw some really strong earnings out of like Schwab. We've seen a ton of bullish paper in like KRE. There was a big new one, KBWB, that went up. Some trader bought some way out of the money calls there. So we've definitely seen the mid caps start to catch some interest. You got to wonder whether this is their time to shine. The big banks have already rallied. Mid caps might follow.
Is now their time to shine? Listeners, hit us up. Let us know as we keep on going. Speaking of time to shine, let's see if it was this trade's time to shine. This is from a week ago on Monday's show. We talked about Verizon. You know them. Ticker symbol VZ. Earnings coming up soon, listeners, before the bell tomorrow. Trading 34.14 right now. Pretty decent level, up about a quarter. On the show last week, well, quickly let's look back on the year. A year ago, they were $45. So, again, they're still net off almost 25% on the year, almost 11 handles. So, net, it's been a rough year. They did hit their low recently of 31.25. That was just last week. So, they have popped hard from that. Hence our paper we were talking about here. On the show last Monday, we saw people coming in and just scooping a whole bunch of upside. In particular, was 2,253 of the July 33s that first caught our eye. The stock at the time was at a 52-week low. It would get lower during the session, but at the time it was hitting a new low of 32 and about a third, and somebody scooped up the July 33. So again, near dated, the weekly calls. They paid about 18 cents for these. As the day went on, they decided they liked it again, so they did another 2,200 of them. They paid 20 cents the second time. They kept going and going. Total of almost 10,000 of these things traded on the day. We also saw a block of the 32 halves go up as well, but we were mostly focused on the 33s. And the stock went out, take a guess, listeners, $33.88 on expiration. So by my back-of-the-napkin math, that's a wee bit north of the 33 strike. So these worked out. Obviously, they made 70 cents on these bad boys. Worth noting, most of them were still apparently open by the end of the session. Still about 8,500 contracts open on this strike at expiration. So kind of an interesting play. Usually you buy something like this, you get the move you want, you take it off, you live to fight another day. Looks like maybe they wanted themselves some stock because they got it. In which case, that actually isn't working out that terribly either. As I said, the stock's up another quarter today, trading north of $34. So if they wanted stock, it ended up working out all right. Again, kind of a weird one. Again, Mr. Meatball, usually we see these weekly swings for the fences, and they take them off when they get their move. In this case, they got their move, and looks like they kind of rode them off into the sunset, sir. What say?
Yeah, interesting, right? You expect them just to take the dollars, but no, they might just want the stock.
Is that a scenario you've encountered recently or even frequently at all? You bought the calls and you decided, I'm going to actually take the stock. I can't remember the last time I did that.
Me, no. But I know there are traders that will do that. Especially if it was done as like, we're going to sell our shares, buy these calls in case we're wrong. That could be the scenario that we were looking at with this.
It is strange. We see it with almost alarming frequency here on the Odd Block, and yet.
And Mark, did we? I'm a little disappointed we're not talking about the action in AMC from Friday's close.
We can talk about it if you want. Let's go into it really quickly. Sure.
Oh yeah. I know you'll find this shock, but a court came out after the close on Friday and basically said the APE shares can't be converted into common AMC, which is a big win for AMC stockholders, right?
Yeah, the market liking it.
Well, AMC certainly did, and you'll never believe what was happening in the last 10 minutes of the day.
I'm going to guess a whole bunch of 5s and 6s trading.
The 4.5s and the 5s expiring that day. I want to say they bought something like 20,000 2-cent calls at the 5 strike, and a chunk of the 4.5s as well for 4 cents on that Friday. Now there was a lot of open interest, so maybe they were just closing down, but smells a little curious to me.
You're saying it smells like Teen Spirit, sir? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it smells like someone may have had an inkling that there was going to be an announcement.
Nearly 60,000.
Not saying they're cheating, but maybe they were cheating.
I hate when this stuff goes up during oddities because it's only so much we can talk about on the day. But nearly 60,000 of the 4 halves went up. You're right, and those were definitely opening. Also, 134,000 of the 4 puts went up. It's like those might have been closing, which is a weird one. And then we have the 5 calls expiring this week, going up 30,000 times. Also opening paper there. AUG 10s going up. All sorts of weird. Yeah, this does sound like maybe a bit of information leakage, the dreaded information leakage, Mr. Meatball, which does not happen.
I'm not saying they knew, but it's definitely curious and well-timed is what I would say.
Hopefully somebody's putting a halt on these trades or freezing these accounts to take a look at what's going on, but you never know. Regulators have proven themselves not to be the savviest bunch when it comes to options oversight. But yeah, somebody got wind of something there in AMC. Luckily, listeners, we're all going to get wind of some options knowledge right now because it's time for a little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, Uncle Mike, like Calgon, take me away, sir, with some options education.
Calgon, take me away. I love it. All right, so let's say right now we're going to do a little Christmas in July type of thing right here. And the reason I'm doing this is because typically when you're looking to do tax harvesting strategies, you usually want to look at towards the end of the year, which you should. But I think right now it's a time to take a look at a couple things in July. So here's where I'm going with it. Let's say that you know that you're retired and maybe you're living off of municipal bond interest, life insurance loans, whatever the case, or you just live off your kids, whatever the case may be, and your annual income is going to be below $83,000 on the year. Well, if that's the case, then you have a pretty big opportunity. And what the opportunity is that if you have a stock, you may have a big opportunity. Number one, if your annual income is going to be close, don't bother doing this. You don't want to take that chance, especially in July. But if you know for a fact that your income is going to be below $83,000, something to talk to your accountant about would be possibly selling some of your stocks that have long-term capital gains. And the reason is that the long-term capital, and by long-term meaning you've held it for a year or greater, the long-term capital gains tax is typically 15%. However, if you are going to make less than roughly $83,000 if you're married, if you're single, then it's going to be a much lower number, of course. But if you're below that amount, then the capital gains tax that you would pay for a long-term capital gain is zero. So here's something to consider. Let's say that you own a stock. And the reason that I think it's kind of timely right now is that stocks have had a little bit of a run-up lately, and possibly you're looking to take profits on them. Well, if that's the case, then one thing with which you could consider is selling the stock and then buying it again. Now, that sounds kind of crazy. What about the commissions? Well, in the age with which we live, there are no commissions. But let's say that you like the stock, it's had a nice run-up, and you still want to stay in it. Well, one thing you could do is you could sell it and then immediately buy it right away. Now, of course, you risk the stock moving between the time you sell it and buy it again. So you do have that risk. But what this could do for you is raise your cost basis. So let's say you bought XYZ stock at $10 a share. It's run up to $50 a share, let's say. And if you want that money in the future, maybe this year's going to be a unique year with your income because you're doing this, that, the other, whatever. You can sell that stock and now your cost base, and then buy it again, and your cost basis is 50 instead of 10. So that way, in a year from now, when you want to sell it for real, and let's say you're going to sell it for real at 60, then your capital gain only goes from 50 to 60 as opposed from 10 to 60. Now, once again, talk to your tax advisor before doing any of this stuff. Make sure that you have this in play. But this is something with which to consider now because of the fact that if you do have a lower income like that, that could be a really big advantage for you from a tax standpoint of raising your cost basis. So with that, once again, consult your tax advisor first, of course. Or if you have a financial advisor who also has a tax designation like me, you can consult him first if it's something with which you're considering. And that is the strategy block for today.
All right, listeners, let's keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. And obviously, it's Fed week, so that's pretty much going to dominate Around the Block watching. So let's look here really quickly, pay off some of our polls from last week first. Last week, we asked you, we've seen a lot of interesting options paper. We can't decide which ones we like the least or most, depending on your point of view. So gun to your head, which of these would you rather do? Would you rather buy the Nikola AUG 5s for 37 cents, the Rivian AUG 40s for 40 cents, or the Keurig Dr. Pepper AUG 33s for 55 cents? I thought that would be the runaway winner because it was in real life. But no, it was the Rivian AUG 40s for 40 cents. You folks loving that right now. Let's see, where is Rivian? Last one we checked it was in the mid 20s, still about 26 and a quarter. A nice move, but not enough for the AUG 40s. 54.3% for that. 28.3% for the old KDP. That one was the winner chicken. That's the one of the three I wanted to do. 32.40 Keurig Dr. Pepper giving some of that back right now, but still a nice pop of about $1 from when we profiled it a little over a week ago on Options Oddities. The Nikola AUG 5s bringing up the rear, only 15.2%. They're trading about $2.40 right now, selling off about a dime or so out there. So interesting stuff out there. This week's question of the week, though, listeners, a lot of headlines in the crypto space right now, a lot going on, a lot of back and forth. Uncle Mike, cover your ears. SEC coming back at people, Binance issues, studies coming out saying a lot of wash trading going on in the crypto space. So stay tuned for the crypto rundown coming up later on after this show, or just hit next on whatever platform you're listening to this on. If you're subscribed to the full network, get the crypto rundown waiting for you there. But our question of the week this week is, there are many ways for options traders to get crypto exposure in their securities accounts. Mara, Riot, Coinbase, and BitO are all popular choices. But what is your weapon of choice for crypto options exposure? Again, we're going on the options angle, so don't write into me with your grayscales and other stuff. Those are not optionable. We're going for options right now. All right, Mr. Meatball, if you have a preferred one, have at it. B, what do you think our audience is choosing? And then C, what are you keeping an eye on for the rest of the week, sir?
So what are their options going to
BitO,
on the crypto options?
BitO, Riot, Coinbase, or you know what? You put BitO twice. We need to fix this. It's BitO. It's supposed to be
Coinbase.
BitO, Riot, Mara, and Coinbase. Let me. It's gonna have to be redone now.
Yeah.
All right, producer.
I'll bet you it's Coinbase.
Producer, can you fix that and change it? Repost that with the exact same length of time. Unfortunately, we already got some votes coming in, but we posted BitO twice. It's supposed to be Mara, Riot, Coinbase, and BitO. So that will be expired. You said, or that will be fixed. You said Coinbase, Mr. Uncle Mike. Same question for you, sir. Oh, good.
Yeah, I would say Coinbase. That would be my bet.
And outside from the Fed, anything else on your radar this week?
Yeah, earnings. Microsoft, Meta, and Google are reporting this week. That is going to be very interesting, and that outcome is going to really determine kind of, I think, as much, if not more, than what the Fed has to say on Wednesday.
Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. If you have a dog in this crypto options fight, have at it. B, what do you think our audience is choosing? And C, what are you watching aside from the Fed this week, sir?
I mean, I've played around a little bit with some Riot, but I think the audience is going to choose BitO. And then in terms of this week, I know I'm going against the grain here, but I do think that I know this is sounding silly, but I do think that common sense is going to actually prevail this time. I think we're going to pause. And I'm hoping that's the case, but if not, we'll be prepared either way. So I'm hoping for a pause for the good of our country. And, of course, there's earnings as well. So this is going to be a very active week, regardless of what happens.
All right. Yeah, so we'll get that poll fixed. Right now, listeners, in the early voting in our broken poll, weirdly enough, BitO's on there twice, and it's somehow losing. I thought it was going to be running away with it. 50% of you choosing Riot right now. Third, exactly, 33.3% choosing Coinbase, and 16.7% choosing BitO. That will obviously be fixed. I apologize to all you who voted early. But we'll get a new and actually accurate poll up there post haste. All right, listeners. that is going to do it for us here on the Old OB. If you want more in your lives, though, just stay tuned. Coming at you with all this crazy crypto drama in a little bit. Hope you enjoyed the episode we had last week with the folks from Deribit, the biggest crypto derivatives exchange on the planet. Fun to kind of chat with those folks, see what's cooking over there. And let's chat with other folks and see what they have cooking. Let's start with the Uncleest of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, if I want to call you up and get knee-deep into Mara versus Riot versus Bitto versus Coinbase, where should I go? What should I do?
Probably not to me, but if you are interested in working with a financial advisor who does work in the option product, if it's appropriate for the clients, feel free to reach out to me. Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW.
And Mr. Meatball, if folks want to hit you up, talk about Riot or Coinbase or VIX or the Fed, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, head over to optionpit.com and check out what, we've got. Power income, where we're talking that type of the Fed and everything. My Fed Watch guy is all over that. That's worth a read ahead of the Federal Reserve. And then I'm talking VIX and volatility and trading and everything you want in my renamed blog, The Trader's Edge.
I can't keep up with all the naming and all the branding you guys have going on.
Well, they pitched me the options insider, and I said, I think that might offend my good friend Mark.
Some other dude is trying to do that as well, so you're not the only one trying to come at the throne. But if you come at the king, you best not miss. In the meantime, listeners, hit them up, optionpit.com, see what
the Ric Flair of options podcasting.
Yes, that is me. Woo all day long, listeners. I'll be wooing it up again in a little bit on the Crypto Rundown. And then back again throughout the rest of the week with a great assortment of content. We've got the advisor's options. So if you want to go deep into all things earnings, vol, and a bunch of other fun stuff with the keeper of all that data, that'll be coming up at noon tomorrow. After that, we got a pro Q&A with our buddy Jim Carroll for all you pro folks coming up at 2 tomorrow. Then Wednesday, of course, a double dose for all you pro folks. Man, you pro folks getting an abundance of riches this week. You're getting a double dose of Options Bootcamp on Wednesday. Mr. Dan going to be traveling there, so thank him for that. And then Thursday, of course, back again, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.